Hey guys, how's it going? Today I am here to help you guys learn some funk. So, if you've never played funk bass before, it's a style that is a little bit more complex than maybe country or blues, depending on how you're playing those and what song you're playing. So, to be fair, there are some complicated songs in those genres, but funk is a little bit more involved rhythmically. You've got to know a little bit about syncopation, kind of just certain shapes you can play on the instrument, and yet it happens over less chords than some of the other styles. So sometimes when you're playing funk grooves, you might stay in one position the whole time, depending on the song you're playing. If you're playing something like a James Brown song, you'll stay in one place, and on the guitar player will be playing basically one chord or around one chord for quite a while. So we just want to talk about basically what to think about, how to even approach creating like a funk groove or just playing things, what you might come across when you're learning other grooves, and maybe just some inspiration as well. So I'm going to dive right in. First, you want to basically make sure, like rhythmically, that you hit beat one. Most of the time in funk, you really want to hit beat one at the beginning of the measure, but then things can get really syncopated in the rest of the measure, which means not very downbeat oriented. They might favor the upbeats, hiding the strong beats and accenting weak beats. But in general, beat one will probably still be there unless you're doing a fill or something of that nature, not the main groove. So I'm just going to like make up something that I consider a funk groove. And then basically we can kind of dissect what I'm doing and talk about rhythmically what you need to know and just sort of things from there. First thing is you can kind of use the box shape. So if you're familiar with playing like some blues songs like Tore Down, you're already familiar with this shape. Not sure what's going on here. It sounds like it's cutting in and out. But basically, if you were playing with your pointer finger playing the 3rd fret notes, then basically your ring finger would play the 5th fret notes, and we're not really playing the other frets. So it's kind of a box shape because you could like draw a box, and basically you're playing those notes and these notes, and you might connect them over with like a slide, and you might fill in the gaps on occasion. But if you play a groove like that, it's not very funky, right? It's very bluesy. But if we change the rhythm around and play straight 8th notes rather than swung 8th notes, and maybe add some 16th notes in there too, it starts sounding a little bit funkier. And then we can add things like ghost notes and all sorts of other things. So let me break that down a little bit. So I'm using the same notes from Tore Down just to illustrate if you're already familiar with that song. If you're not, these are the notes I'm using. It's the 3rd fret on the E string, the 5th fret on the D string, the 3rd fret on the D string, and then the 5th fret on the A string. I don't know why this thing is cutting in and out. Very strange. I thought I would use this so that you would know that you can play funk on the rubber strings. You don't have to have metal strings to do some of these techniques. So that's why I wanted to use this bass. But Sounds like it's killing the battery or it has a short in it or something. So once again, that was 3rd fret on the E string, then 5th fret on the D string, then 3rd fret on the D string, and 5th fret on the A string. So if we did it like tore down, you're going down, beat, down, beat, down, beat, down, beat, and filling in the gaps with a swung 8th note upbeat. But instead of doing that long, short kind of thing, we're going to go back to very even notes. Okay, so you could start by doing that, and it sounds like rock and roll. And then maybe we could leave certain ones out and make it a little more interesting. And so some of what I did was I left out boom, ba, 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 ba. So I left out the downbeats on beat 3 and 4. So we've got 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. So we're like turning a blues song into a funk song just by syncopating the rhythm a little bit. So instead of, I'm doing straight 8th notes instead, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then I'm taking a few of those out. Does it have to be those? No, you could take out some of the other ones. We're going to keep beat 1 in there though. So you could go, that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so basically there I took away all the other downbeats and syncopated the rest of the measure. So we had a downbeat here, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and but those are the same notes basically in the same order as a song like Tore Down. Now we've got a syncopated version and that's good so far. So what can we do from there if we want to make it a little bit different? We can add some 16th notes in there. So instead of just having those 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we can now be counting 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and then leave certain ones of those out. So 1E and a, so 1E and a 2E and a 3. So I can't count it and come up with something at the same time. Let me think for a second. And then I'm adding ghost notes in there already, but we'll talk about those in a second. So what is this? 1, so 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a, wow, that's hard to do. Okay. That may be too complicated. I'm like jumping from step 2 to step 6 or something. So why don't we just add a couple of 8th notes in there? So what if we just added them? We were going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Why don't we just add them after the ands? 1 and 2 and a. So 1 and 2 and a. So that's 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. And then why don't we just not add them on every single one? So let's just do it on maybe the last one. No, I don't like that. Let's do it on just the second one instead. How about just after beat 2? 1 and 2 and a. Or just how about after beat 2 and beat 3? That sounds better. So we're kind of experimenting just to figure out where those 16th notes sound good. So 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4 and that still kind of has a less syncopated feel because we're leaving the ands in there. And if you're counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it could be more syncopated by avoiding the downbeats sometimes, which are like 1, 2, 3, 4. But now that we have notes in between the numbers and the ands, we could avoid the ands a little bit more too to make it a little more interesting. So 1E and, so 1E and a 2E and a. So now we could go like 1E and a, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 and 1. So I like that. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3. So 1 E and a 1 E and a. So now that second note that we were doing, the 5th fret on the D string, it's now going to happen on the after beat 1. So instead of being the downbeat of beat 2 or later on, I'm scooting it way up to the and after beat 1. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 and 1. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a. So I can't do it 2 times in a row apparently. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a. So that all of a sudden sounds a little bit more funky because now we're leaving out the downbeats, but we're also leaving out some of the ands. So like we're playing beat 1, the after beat 1, skipping over beat 2 entirely, leaving some interesting space. And then we're not playing again until the and after beat 3. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a. So that's a really interesting rhythm. So 1 E. So 1 E and a. Can't play it 2 times in a row, but it's a really interesting rhythm. Now, can I add some ghost notes to that? So ghost notes are adding a little percussive sounds that aren't notes per se. So like if you flatten your fingers across the strings and you just kind of, you still pluck the notes, but you're not pushing down on them. You're just lightly touching the strings. You get kind of a percussive thump. Okay. So we've got, so far we got. Let's see. Let's see. I don't know. There's so much space in there. I kind of want to add some ghost notes in that space. If this thing will stop cutting out. I'm going to switch over to a different bass because this one is not working with me too well. It could be the amp though. Let me see if it's the cord in the amp first. I think it's killing the battery. I think that's what is going on. Okay, but it's bugging me. So I'm just going to unplug it and switch back to the metal strings. As much as I was going to try to add some slap in there on the rubber strings to kind of show you that's working, I may have to kind of hold off on that. So we got, can you hear this one still? Okay. Ooh, I'm thinking before we add the ghost notes, maybe we should add some little walk up things. So that kind of makes it sound funky too. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3. Now we'll just go ahead and add some ghost notes. So first we had 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4 E and a. Now I'm going to add a ghost note followed by another note. So I'm going 1 E and a 2 E and. So 1 E and a 2 E and. So I'm adding a ghost note on the E after beat 2, 1 E and a 2 E. And then I'm going to play the same note that I played before, 5th fret on the D string, again after that ghost note. 1 E and 2 E and. So 1 E and 2 E, or 1 E and 2 E and. So now I'm really syncopating it. And that's just from adding one ghost note in there. So 1 E and 2 E and. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and... Oh, now I'm doing it on the E. No, I'm still doing the last note on the and. That would be a cool thing to do too, is to move that last note over, but we won't worry about that. I don't think I like that as much. So now we've got a groove. I think that's enough for that groove. We've got a note followed by its octave, followed by a ghost note on the E after beat 2. So we're still not playing beat 2 at all. Then playing that same 5th fret on the D string, so that octave of the first note. Again, on the and after that ghost note. And then we're waiting still till the next and to play the 3rd fret on the D string 2 times. And then we're waiting till the and after beat 4 to play that 5th fret on the A string. So that could be our groove. So funk also uses a lot of octaves, right? So that's why I'm starting the groove with an octave. We're starting with playing on beat 1. We've got our syncopation by not playing beat 2, beat 3, or beat 4 at all. So we're taking away all the really strong beats after beat 1. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and... Oh, I'm doing the E again. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. So then you can kind of add fills from there. Let's see. Pookie Lover says, "Hey, Steven, thank you for streaming this. I have a Ubass and have been looking for content like this. Keep up the great work." Thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying this. Yeah, this is kind of fun doing a dive into funk. So I'm kind of creating a groove with you guys. I didn't really have this planned, obviously. So you can kind of look into, if you're coming up with a groove, that box shape sort of thing is a great place to start. I wouldn't make a song where you're moving chords around. I would just do something over one chord if we're playing funk. And then once you come up with a groove and you do that, you can move the groove around. Why don't we do that as the next step? So all I did there was I just picked a place where I wanted to move the notes. And I know some that work and some that don't. If you're familiar with any basic theory, you can move from your 1 chord to either your 4 chord, your 5 chord, your flat 7 chord would be a good place to do it. But sometimes funk will just stay on 1 chord and we'll just do the pattern in the same place. So we've got that. We could move it around, like I said, and all I'm doing there is playing the same distance between the notes. So if I'm doing my box shape, the first note's this corner of the box, the second note is 2 frets over, 2 frets down. So you could think about it like that. And then the note after that is going to be, the next different note is going to be the 3rd fret here, which is right below that first starting note, but 2 strings down. And then the last note is basically where your ring finger would be if it was on the A string. So I'm doing an octave where I'm skipping over a string, going from one corner of the box to the other. Then I'm going down the side of the box here, and then I'm hitting kind of in the middle of the box. So hopefully that helps. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, so that's kind of the idea. Then you can move that box shape around. So we can take that whole pattern we just did. Now we can do it here. So we're sliding every single note that we just did 2 frets down. But our fingers are doing the exact same thing. It's just a shape, just a geometric shape that we're moving. But then let's just say after that section of the song or something, we just stay back here on this groove again. So when someone says someone's a pocket player, they would probably stick to that groove really, really solidly and rarely do fills. And when they do fills, they would probably keep it within the groove, maybe just embellish that. So you have this going. But a pocket player would probably just be playing the groove over and over again, almost like if you had a loop going for like a hip hop song or something else, where it's just the same thing over and over again. But even there, they might throw a fill in on the 4th time. Some players might wait till the 8th time or the 16th time just to keep the groove really solid. But what can we do for a fill? Like we could do something like that. So notice that that's like a groove in itself, but I'm just doing something slightly different. What I did there was I just added a chromatic note within our box. So it's like we're starting just on this side of the box, the D string notes, and I'm filling in the gap with a 4th fret. So 3rd fret, 4th fret, 5th fret. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4. So the whole groove with the fill, first we've got 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and then the next time we have 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So that second half, that's 3rd fret on the E string, going to 5th fret on the D string. Then we do that ghost note. Then well, that wasn't a good ghost note. So one thing I want to say about ghost notes, sometimes you might get harmonics if you're right over a fret when you're playing a ghost note. So if you don't want that, the secret is just touch the string, the same string you're playing, in at least 2 places over here. And then you won't get a harmonic ringing out. So what I'm doing there is like I'm touching the string lightly on the 5th fret, and I just decided that in that particular instance, just also put my pointer finger down here on the string just to stop a harmonic from ringing out. So once again, 3rd fret on the E string, 5th fret on the D string. Then we've got that ghosted note, and that's on still on the D string. Then we're playing the 5th fret again on the D string. And then we've got 3, 4, 5 all on the D string still. And 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4. So that's our fill. So let's say we just want to throw that in on the 4th time. So now we've got a cool groove, but you could also add a different fill on the 8th time if you want to. So why don't we do a little like slide fill? That's going to break out of our box shape, but this is something that you can kind of get away with doing if you compare it to the other notes. So let's say we're doing the 3rd fret box shape, 3rd fret and 5th fret box shape. But now I'm going to move up to the G string just for this little fill. And I'm going to play the 3rd fret there. Still kind of seems like it's in the box shape. Slide into the 4th fret there, but not the 5th fret. So you could sort of argue it's still sort of a box shape, but we're not completing the box until we come back here. And that slide is taking our hand out of the box shape. So we'll have to reset after doing the fill. So what I'm doing there is, once again, 3rd fret on the G string, sliding in to the 4th fret on the G string. So I play the 3rd fret, keep the pressure down, and slide it 1 fret forward. And and then I'm playing the 5th fret on the D string after that. Now we just got to figure out rhythmically how we want to fit that in. We could do it in the same rhythm as the other fill. So 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and that would give us time to get our hand back into position. What was it? So now we've got 2 fills that we can do there, and they're kind of using those 16th notes. Maybe I should play it slower for you guys, just so you can hear it slower. Oh, let me do the groove. So I'm going to do the groove, the first fill, the groove, then the second fill. I can't remember the groove. Okay, let's try again. 3E and a 4E and a. That's it. Oh, I don't know. I did that one that time, but I skipped over doing it again. You get the idea though. So that's our groove. Those are our fills. And then if we wanted to, if you're thinking about like a James Brown song, what he does is he'll go up to a different shape, right? And then the bass player is usually doing something kind of within a box shape still. But now instead of being on this string, they might move their whole pattern down. So I'm moving my pattern from the 3rd fret on the E string starting to the 3rd fret on the A string starting. So we could do that for the bridge. Like when he goes, take it to the bridge or something, he might go to the 4 chord, which in the key of G, that's moving to C, which is just moving our pattern, same frets down the string. And if you're familiar with the blues, you've already done this before. We could even use this pattern in a 12-bar blues now. So that's another thing that you could do. You could create a funky blues. So that would be do the first pattern 4 times, move up to where we just talked about, the 4 chord, and then do that 2 times there, move it back to the first one, do it 2 times. Then once on the 5 chord, which means we're moving our hand up to the 5th fret, to the whole box shape, just instead of being starting on the 3rd fret, now it's starting on the 5th fret. 1 time there, then 1 time on the 4 chord, and then we're back. So I'm going to go through that whole thing just so you can see how to do like a funky 12-bar blues with this thing we already did. I'm going to throw the fills in kind of how we did the 2nd and the 4th times. Just to kind of keep it interesting. So you can still add variations, even though we're repeating the same groove. You can go ahead and add the variations in if you want to within everything. So hopefully that makes sense. But here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be like taking that funk groove and moving it around a 12-bar blues pattern. So you could do that, or you could just stay on 1 chord and just have that groove be the main thing, or you could do some combination, or pick a different pattern to move it around, right? Like I think we talked about, you could also move it down 2 frets. That would be moving it down to the flat 7, and you could just do that once or twice there. And just decide when you want to go to it or when you don't. But in a James Brown style song, and he does a lot of different things, right? He has some songs that are blueses that kind of do that funky blues thing. So that would be more like I Feel Good. That one kind of does that 12-bar blues kind of funk style. but not with that groove. And then he has some songs like I believe it's Super Bad that has the what's I can't remember the groove. So it's the same kind of thing we're doing, only he's starting on an A string note and extending the box down to have an extra note on there. And I'm probably mixing our two grooves now and not remembering that one correctly, but Super Bad's an example of a song that does that. And then when it goes to the bridge, I think it goes to the 4 chord, and he does a totally different groove there. It's not like, it doesn't have to be the same groove. And I can't remember it at all, but it's a different groove when he goes to the 4 chord. But he does that and then comes back to the first one. And there aren't really ghost notes, as many ghost notes in that one. And he is using some techniques that we didn't talk about. I think it's easier to do certain notes in there if you rake through the strings. So if you play one note and then you're going to the next string, using that same finger to play both. But that's just kind of like an example of, you know, some classic funk that kind of uses this idea that we're doing. Okay, so then there's a whole other brand of funk where we have slap bass. I was going to try to do some slap bass on the rubber strings just to show you can do it, but that bass seems to be cutting in and out when I plug it into the amp, and the slap doesn't sound as good without it plugged in. So I'm going to do a little bit on here. So let me think if I can remember the groove we were doing before. 20 and here. Can we do a slap version of that? Maybe not. It doesn't really lend itself to that, so we might have to create a new groove. But I'm still doing similar kinds of things with the box shape, with the sliding in there. All right. So with slap and pop, it's a little bit different. It's a little harder to do on the rubber strings. And real quick, Toe in the Water, thank you for hanging out. The double neck, real quick, if I can throw that in. I believe it's the Acklot or Acklot or I guess it's just one way to pronounce it. Acklot. It has a ukulele on the bottom. I think it's a tenor size, and then the Ubass on the top. And that, just so you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, I don't know why it's cutting in and out. It may be that there's a short somewhere in it. It may be something to do with the amp or the cable. It may not have to do with the bass at all. I hadn't had any issues with it, but it's a really inexpensive one. And so I was just kind of like, ooh, that's so cool. Even if it's terrible, I'll still like it. And then it turned out to be okay. It really wasn't that bad of an instrument. My biggest downside of that is there's a switch to go back and forth between the bass and the ukulele side, and I would rather just have that one in between be both of them on, but it doesn't really work that well. The volumes aren't even. So, but otherwise, it's a really cool thing. So thanks, Laura, for saying that, and I'll see you next time. But back to this. If we're going to do slap bass, first you have to have the elements of slap, right? So your thumb has to bounce kind of like a drumstick off the string. So you're not really trying to play through it like that because your thumb will stick too long. What I think of is you stop right before hitting the string. So you stop here, and then if you've ever seen, this is a terrible thing to compare it to, but those like crash test dummies, when they do the crash simulations, the car stops when it hits the wall, but the dummy keeps moving forward, right? And that's why we have seat belts and everything to stop that momentum. But when we're doing this slap motion, we could try to stop this far away from the string, but if we go fast enough like that, the thumb will continue on. So even though I'm trying to stop here, I'm still hitting my thumb. So what I kind of do with that is like, I'm not trying to slam my thumb through the string and have it go like that. I'm trying to stop it here so that it bounces back to here. Like if you leave your thumb loose, but your hand is tight, if you were to like slap the body of the bass with your fingernails, the thumb would still hit the string and then come back to where the rest of the hand was resting if it's a little bit loose. So that's kind of an idea to help you not have your thumb stay on the string too long, because at first that's usually a bigger issue for people slapping, is their thumb will stay too long and it'll sound more like that, and they'll be like, why can't I get a note to sound cleanly? And it's really especially difficult on the rubber strings, the polyurethane strings. So you have to try extra hard on that. So in a minute I'll imitate it. I'll try to do it on that, but without it plugged in, you may not hear the sound as well. But anyway, that's the idea. So you're just kind of like stopping your thumb maybe a centimeter away from the string. You're stopping your hand a centimeter away from the string so that your thumb bounces back to that position. Okay. And then we have our pop motion. If you're on the polyurethane strings, you don't want to pop very hard at all. You want to be very, very light and delicate with this. But on the metal strings, you have to give it a little more of a pull so that it'll bounce off the frets. Whereas if you just barely do it like you would on the polyurethane strings, it won't get that extra percussive quality to it. So let's talk about that. I'm kind of hooking my fingers like this. So these fingers are hooked, and then I'm pulling forward. And sometimes, I mean, it might be like a turn of the wrist, might still like, I guess turning it in might do that automatically. So you may not really have to pull forward, but I'm thinking of it kind of like pulling forward. But you have a hook, and then you pull forward. So it's like your finger's not giving and going with the string. Like when you're plucking, you're kind of letting the finger go with the string a little bit more. But here we have like a solid hook, right? Unlike the thumb being loose on our whichever finger we're popping with, we want like a little bit tighter of a hook so that it pulls and releases the string. And that release is where the string slaps the frets, making that pop sound. So slap and then pop. So trying to imitate the groove we were doing a second ago, the first part, 1 E and 2 E and. I'm doing the ghost note as a slap on the E string. So I'm slapping the first note, 3rd fret on the E string. Then I'm popping the 5th fret on the D string. And then to get that ghost note in the same place, I'm going to slap the E string rather than having that ghost note be on the other string. So I'm letting go of the pressure on the 3rd fret and hitting the E string. And like I said, if you need to touch it in 2 places so that a harmonic doesn't ring out, you can use one of the other fingers to mute that. And then after that, I'm popping that 5th fret on the D string again. So that's the idea, basically, with that. And then from there, I think we'd have to change the groove. Because it's hard to go bum bum with that. You could slap them, I guess. But it's hard to get like a double pop. So I don't really want to go there with it. But you could work on things like that and still make this groove happen. But yeah, just adding slaps and pops, still doing ghost notes. You can do ghost note slaps. You can do ghost note pops. It just didn't make sense to make that one a pop there since we had just popped. Popping takes a little bit longer than plucking, and it's harder to do 2 fingers in a row if you're leaving them both as hooks. So that's a timing thing. So that's why I replaced the ghost note with the slap there. And it's a lot easier to add ghost notes slapping fast, right? once you work up that speed. And when you do slap and pop, you're kind of imitating a drum groove. So you could think about what you're doing on the thick E string is what the drummer is doing with their foot on the kick drum, right? So you're doing that. And then when you're popping, you can think of that more like a snare drum. So a very common groove that you've probably heard on drums, bass, snare, bass, bass, snare, or if we're imitating a drum set just with our bodies, stomp, clap, stomp, stomp, clap. So you could, when you're learning slap bass, try doing that rhythm with slaps and pops. Slap, pop, slap, slap, pop. And you're just doing the 2 notes of an octave when you're practicing this. So slapping the E string and popping the D string. And so I'm doing the 3rd fret on the E string and the 5th fret on the G string, on the D string, since that's an octave higher. And then you could learn some other drum grooves and try them on here too. And you could pluck those grooves too. And incorporate those into your funk grooves too. So it's just kind of like expanding your rhythms and then working on all those elements we talked about before. I think now I'm just going to recap what we talked about before a little bit, and then that's it. So what I did to kind of introduce the groove was we took the notes of a very common like blues song. So we're just doing the 3rd fret on the E string, the 5th fret on the D string, the 3rd fret on the D string, and then we're going to the 5th fret on the A string. Okay, we're using those notes, but we're adding a syncopated rhythm, then adding some ghost notes in. So let's do the syncopated rhythm first. So 1 E and a 2 E, and let's see. So we got 1 E and a. So 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Now we're adding a ghost note and an extra hit on the 5th fret on the D string after it. And you can add more ghost notes if you want to. We didn't talk about that, but you could. But it gets harder when you do that. And then you can move it around. So then you got that ability, and then we could try doing a slap version of the groove, but it's going to sound a little bit different. And then I might do hammer-ons there because popping 3 notes in a row is just a little uncomfortable, kind of. You can do it. It's just maybe not the best sounding way to do it. So I might just do a hammer-on for those. But it's kind of the same idea a lot of times when I come up with a groove there. Do you have to do all that stuff? No, not really. There's some funk grooves that revolve more around one note and don't do the whole entire box pattern. But I think having those things in your arsenal can help you expand your funk groove and just adding stuff to it like that. So does anybody have any questions about this? We kind of covered a lot, and I jumped through, starting with a quarter note groove, turning it into an 8th note groove, making them swung 8th notes, then making them back to straight 8th notes for funk, and then doing that. Are you allowed to slap on a Ubass? I mean, I've done it. I do it. So I'd say so. I wanted to do it on the rubber strings, the polyurethane strings. And yeah, you are allowed to. That's a funny way to put it. no one's going to come to your house and take your Ubass for doing that. But I'm having trouble with my pickup on here, so that's not even. For some reason, the E string on here is not cooperating. I'm gonna try to do it with the volume down because it's just kind of. But yeah, you can slap on them. It's a different sound. And that's something that you got to kind of be prepared for. And for whatever reason, I'm having trouble. I think the battery's dying. I think that's what's going on. Let's see. It could just be a pickup issue with this one. I would use the other Ubass. I have a Kala Wanderer that also has polyurethane strings. But when I picked it up today, I noticed that one of those strings is starting to crack through. It's got like a little line on the bottom here. And I just decided that would not be the best thing to use there for this lesson. But does anybody have any questions about any of the stuff we covered in this funk video? So anything about syncopation, anything about the ghost notes, anything about slapping, because we did a little bit of slap kind of in the middle. So just let me know. And hello to those on the chat. Thank y'all so much for commenting and hanging out. I hope it's been fun. But yeah, just let me know if there's any questions that you have. And then okay, someone said, I'm not sure what kind of music you like. Well, funk is one that I like a lot, so that's why we're kind of playing funk here. But yeah, so you can start with the stuff that we talked about earlier, basically. That's our groove. So you can start with that kind of stuff, and then you can get into other things. Oh, it's interesting that you bring up Primus. So there's a guy over here brought up Primus, and yes, I am a Primus fan. That is a good question. Somewhere over here, I actually have a signed poster from them because I have seen them. They do a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. So when I was talking about getting into the slap and doing those box shapes, but they don't stick to just the box shapes. They do some like notes that are a little more dissonant within it. And but there is a basis in funk there going on, right? Because he's doing the slap stuff. He's also adding some strum notes to things. I might try it on the other one. But yeah, Red Hot Chili Peppers is another good band. That's a great comment too. I do like them as well, and they are a good example of these funk elements that we're talking about. I'm going to go back to the metal strings because you'll be able to hear that the slaps on there a little bit better. Although there's even another Ubass that has the round wounds where it would be even more good for that. So that's another thing. The type of strings does matter when you're doing slap bass. The flat wounds still sound okay. And I guess right now I took the batteries out of this one to put them into that other bass. So you can't really hear it through the amp. You're just getting the acoustic version. So this is just what this sounds like not plugged in. Like I could turn the amp off and it sounds the same. So this is what unplugged slap sounds like. But yeah, I do like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and they do a lot of things like this. They're they tend to move the chords around more. So I think we talked about that. And as the basics of funk, I was showing you the chords in one place, and then we started to move the patterns around. Red Hot Chili Peppers are a good example of a band that moves them around a lot. Let me think. Um, yeah. Yeah, anyway, I'm not playing it right. I'm forgetting things, but they are a good example of a funk band where you play patterns and move them around with variations, with fills. They do a lot of fills. You have a lot of good questions over here. Yeah, I like bands like Black Sabbath. I had a student that was learning a Black Sabbath song earlier today, and he was trying to do it in I think it's called Into the Void, and he was trying to do it in standard tuning rather than tuning down, which I thought was cool. But yeah, those are great questions. Thanks for logging on and asking all those. But do you have any questions about this funk lesson, or anybody on the chat or still watching? Do you have any questions about anything I covered? I know for some people, y'all are familiar with this stuff. And then for others, this is brand new information. So if you don't know about 16th notes, I have other videos that kind of teach the elements of 16th notes. Because I know we started with eighth notes going like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, just kind of like, right, like that kind of thing. And that sounds almost more disco or something. And then we added 16th notes in to make it a little bit more interesting. Right, that kind of stuff. So yeah. All right. So Power of Darkness. You said you're just now learning how to play guitar. A good song for that, if you like Black Sabbath, and I bet you already know this. Paranoid's a good one, right? So that's a good one to like jump into for the guitar. Maybe the solo is a little tricky. I haven't really ever tried to play the guitar solo, but that one would be a fun one on that. Very cool. Very, very cool. But yeah, but the stuff that we're talking about now, it's not so much funky. So kind of just staying in those like funk grooves and things. It's really pattern oriented, and really make sure you start with the downbeat, but then everything else can kind of be syncopated from there, where we hide the downbeats. And then you don't want to throw in too many fills if it's really truly funk. Just throw them in where it matters. You could do every fourth thing, or you could wait longer. So if you've been watching the whole thing, this groove is kind of coming from a James Brown sort of background. So I'm answering you in the comments here, because you said, do you like James Brown? So yes, the answer is I like the grooves in James Brown songs for sure. So one of the examples I used a minute ago, I think, was Super Bad. And that's using that box shape that we're already talking about. But then sometimes he's filling in the gaps. And he's kind of doing a hammer on, which we didn't really talk about doing that there. 4, 5, and 6. So you play the 4th fret, hammer onto the 5th fret, hammer onto the 6th fret. But that uses 16th notes. 1E and a 2E and a 3 and a 4 and a 4. Yeah. And then that bum, bum, ba, bum, that last note is a 16th note earlier than where you would think to put it, right? makes it more interesting. So it's things like that that kind of add a little interest to the thing. But then you just kind of repeat things over and over again if you're doing a James Brown style groove. And then the other bands you mentioned are good examples of taking that shape and moving it around. When James Brown, like a lot of his song will be on one chord and in one area. And I say one chord, but the guitar part might have multiple things, but it's a groove based around one chord. And then he'll say, take it to the bridge, right? And it'll go to maybe the 4 chord of the song. So if you're in the key of D, D, E, F, G, you'd be on a G for the bridge. And then it might be a different groove, but it'll still be that kind of style. And you can break out of the box shape. There are things that you can do, right, that break out of that box pattern, but it's a good place to start for coming up with funk grooves. All right. But yeah, that covers it for what I'm trying to go over with funk. So basically, you can take something you're already familiar with if you play the blues, right? You've got your root, octave, seventh, fifth, or your box shape. We'll just call it that. And then you can kind of syncopate it a little bit more using 16th notes, add some ghost notes in there, some dead notes or ghost notes. And then every maybe 4th time or 8th time, you could add a fill, which means just a variation of the groove, but you don't have to. So thank you all so much for checking this out and hanging out. If you missed anything, just watch the replay. I'll leave it up. And that way you can rewind certain parts and watch them back. And if you have any questions at that point, since it'll be a replay, you can just comment and I will see them eventually, hopefully rather quickly, and respond to you guys. So thank you so much for hanging out, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone.